Greetings to anyone listening to this. I hope your day is going better than mine. My name is Eli Matthews, and by the time you heard this, I will be dead. I work for an energy company that the government runs, and we have made a colossal mistake. A quick overview of what I'm working on. Long before I began, a team of researchers discovered what they thought to be an alternate dimension that lies close in proximity to ours. They came up with plans to reach it, but the technology just never advanced enough to get there. It's like being in front of a locked door that could take you anywhere, but you can't find the key. That's where I come in. I was contracted by the government to take part in this project. I guess they thought I fit the bill for what they were working on, and when I saw the paycheck they were offering, I couldn't turn it down. After signing what felt like a never-ending stack of waivers and non-disclosure agreements, I was on my way to an off-book site in Washington State's countryside. I have a PhD in physics and have published a few papers that have helped me gain a strong foothold in my field. I'm no genius compared to a lot of people, but I have learned how to hold my own over the years. This is why when I was offered the job, I jumped at it because it seemed like a great chance to increase my knowledge. When I got the rundown of what I would be working on, I felt like I had just been given the opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, who wouldn't want to attempt to reach another place outside of our universe? A place that could reveal knowledge that would blow our fundamental understandings out of the water. It made me feel like I was one of the explorers of old reaching untainted land for the first time. The leader of this whole thing was a lady named Dr. Emilia Gray. She was a physicist like myself, and she had already been working on the project for a while when I arrived. She was an attractive woman, around 35 years old, with short black hair. She was respected by everyone at the facility and was a stern leader who knew how to give orders. After around 3 years of grueling work, we finally had what we thought was a working prototype that could finally pull off the impossible. We decided to call it the Mayflower, after the boat that brought the pilgrims to the New World. This was the 6th rendition of the gate that we created that should allow us to pass through into this new place. The previous gates either didn't work altogether, or would only hold the proper conditions for a few seconds. The Mayflower should be able to hold it indefinitely as long as there is sufficient power provided. I say this because the Mayflower consumes enough energy to power a small city. The first day of testing began. For the first test, we were sending in a rover that was made by the engineers here at the lab. This rover was made with state-of-the-art technology that made it suitable for any environment. The rover was controlled by remote control and had to be attached via cable so we would keep the connection once it passed through. All systems checked. Ready on your command, an operator said as he looked to Dr. Gray for approval. She raised her arm and held out a thumbs up from the elevator room we were in.
Gate opening in 3, 2, 1.
I remember looking at the gate as the white-hot rings that surrounded the machine began speeding up, and a loud hum filled the room. Then, an impossibly dark portal appeared in the center. We had actually done it. The years of hard work had finally paid off. The rover we had equipped with just about everything you could think of rolled up just a few feet shy of the black abyss that awaited. There were people decked out in protective suits doing a last once-over before we sent it through. They gave us the all-clear, and we were finally ready. The team began inching the rover forward, and after a few moments, the front half of the machine was through, then the back, and it was gone. There were a few applauses and people cheering. Then everyone looked up at the big screen we had in front of the room to display the camera feed. The screen showed static for a moment, and then lit up, giving us our first ever view of this new place. Everyone in the room fell silent. We weren't getting an image at all. Just darkness. Then the light switched on from the rover, and we were given a few feet of visuals. This place seemed to have some sort of fog that blanketed everything. Even from the high-powered beams that the rover provided, it was struggling to get through just a few feet of it. It was a place encompassed by darkness. The ground that we could make out looked almost charred, like it had been scorched by some of the most intense heat imaginable. That's when we decided to cut on the microphone. The winds in this place were so strong that they could put most hurricanes to shame. The anemometer was reading wind speeds around 160 miles per hour. That wasn't what was so strange about it though. The howls that this place produced sounded like deep guttural screams that were constantly going back and forth with each other. Like a symphony of tortured souls. I remember that it shook me to my bones, and I had a cold sweat break out. I felt for the first time like we were somewhere we shouldn't be. The rover took a couple of samples of the ground and got some more readings of the atmosphere, then started its way back from where it passed through. It was getting pretty close to the portal when we heard it. There aren't words to describe the sounds this thing made. It was so low and loud that the rover itself was shaking. People in the observatory were holding their palms to their ears in hopes of drowning out its cry. "Hurry up and get the rover back through!" and Dr. Gray shouted to the people at the control station for the rover. They were frantically trying every control they had at their disposal when they looked over at Dr. Gray. "Ma'am, we're trying everything. The rover is not responding." Then, the cry came again. I looked over at the display screen, and that's when everything went black. The only thing visible now was a text that read, "Signal lost" across the screen. Some of the rover operators started making their way to the gate. "Let's try to pull it out manually," one of the operators suggested. There was a huge winch that can be used if control is lost on the rover. The men walked over and got to working firing up the winch. It roared to life, and the cable started retracting back into the coil it was on. The thing is, after a few minutes of the cable coming in, we reached the final stretch of line. And all that came out was a severed cord. The rover was gone. The next few days were spent reviewing footage and going over data that the rover managed to send back before the signal was lost. I wasn't getting much sleep then, because every time I tried to lay down, my mind would drift, and I would hear that awful cry. And that's when they told me they were going to open the portal again. But this time, we would be sending people through. The day had finally come when we would fire up the gate for the final time. We went through all the procedures as last time, and double-checked everything to assure no malfunctions would take place. We were sending a team of 8 through the gate. I assume most of them were military, because they all had the look of highly trained individuals. The only 2 who weren't soldiers were scientists from the lab who will be sent to gather information. They were all equipped with suits that were made to withstand the harsh environments of this other world. The soldiers were also given rifles, just in case. They won't be able to go very far due to the fact that they are attached via cables, just like the rover. With that, we went through all the protocols, and the gate fired up once again. "Remember, if there is any trouble, everyone is to return through the gate immediately," Dr. Gray said as she looked at the team. "You don't have to tell me twice, ma'am," one of the scientists responded. With that, each person made their way through the gate, and we were once again treated with the dark abyss that was a trademark of this other place. Each person was equipped with a monitor that kept track of their vitals, as well as a camera to display their visuals. With everyone through, they did a systems check and set off to find the rover. The trek was slow and meticulous due to the limited visuals and high winds. After about 15 minutes of traversing, they finally came up to where the rover should have been.
"Ma'am, are you sure this is the right position?"
One of the soldiers said over the comm system. "Yes, you should be right where we lost connection. Dr. Gray said while checking her monitor again for reassurance. Everyone watched the big screen as we looked at the camera feeds. And sure enough, there was no sign of the rover. It's not like the wind would have blown it away. It was made for practically any environment. I remember wanting nothing more than for those people to get out of there. Alright everyone, the rover's gone. Time to head back, Dr. Gray said into the microphone. With that, they began the track back to the portal and back to safety. Unfortunately, they never got back to it. As they were coming back, that piercing cry rang out just like the last time, and everyone dropped to their knees, holding their hands to their heads. The suits they had were somewhat soundproof, which just goes to show how loud this thing was.
Pick up the pace, everyone,
one of the soldiers announced. Just as he said that, one of the scientists on the mission, Dr. Riley's vitals disappeared, and her camera feed went dark. There was no noise. She was fine 1 second, and gone the next. This sent the observatory into a frenzy, and none of them even noticed. What just happened to Dr. Riley? Her vitals and visual just went out, Dr. Gray said to the team. They all looked around, and I noticed a heart rate spike from their vital readings.
We have lost visual on Dr. Riley,
a soldier responded.
Everyone spread out and look around. Make sure to have eyes on someone at all times. We don't need anyone else getting lost out here.
Then, the roar came again, and all the screens went black. Pull in those cables now! Dr. Gray shouted at the crew we had ready at the winch. They pulled all the cables in, and just like last time, they were all severed, with no clue as to what happened to the team. Then, someone walked through the portal. It was Dr. Riley, but her suit was torn almost to shreds. She should have been dead, but somehow managed to walk all the way back to the portal and come through. Everyone in the observatory froze and stared at her.
You should stay where you belong,
Dr. Riley said in a low, torn voice that didn't belong to her.
The place you have entered does not belong to you.
I remember Dr. Gray looked at me, and I could see the fear on her face. What happened to the team? She asked, with a shaky voice. After she said that, something happened that will be forever seared into my soul. She let out one of the most blood-curdling screams I've ever heard. Her body started to change. She dropped to the ground, and I could hear bones breaking and flesh tearing. Her skin, which was melting off, was replaced by a viscous black substance. Her hands elongated, and crimson claws sprouted from the ends of her fingers, at least half a foot in length. Her head was morphed into something akin to a bear, and sharp, jagged teeth filled its mouth. What used to be Dr. Riley began to stand up, when other things came out of the portal behind her. I can only assume that it was the rest of the crew that went in, because there are 7 of them. Each one turned into something just as awful as the next. The only similarities they have are the jet black skin and yellow glowing orbs they have now for eyes. Then, what used to be Dr. Riley reached out her new arm and took a researcher's head clean off. What follows is chaos. The cries of the creatures and the rest of the people in the observatory were something that will never leave me for what little time I have left. I saw arms, legs, torsos, and chunks of flesh strewn everywhere within seconds. The creatures seemed to have one goal, and that was to get rid of everyone here. Guards with guns began firing at the creatures, but they seemed to only get angry at this. We need to get to the control room, Dr. Gray said as she took me out of my daze. We have to make sure these things don't get out. After I took a moment to regain myself, I looked at her. Let's go. We headed off the platform we were on and started through the observatory. The creatures were still tearing apart anyone in close proximity with no mercy whatsoever. I took Dr. Gray's hands and we made our way up to the exit doors. Just as I was about to open them, one of the creatures swung at me, leaving a deep gash in my left arm, and I let out a scream. That's when one of the cars started firing at the creature. It looked at me for a second more, before going to rip that poor man to shreds. We made it through the door and into the control room that's down the hall. We have locked and barricaded the door with whatever we could find. But it's not going to hold forever. There are fail-safes in this facility in case of an accident that will lock the place down. I tried to wrap my arm the best I could using my lab coat, but the bleeding hasn't stopped yet. The control room has cameras that cover the building. I can't bring myself to look back into the observatory. Everyone's dead. The creatures are pacing around the building, and every once in a while, one will walk by the room we are in. I know we can't undo what we have done. I think we went to another world that was owned by something older and much more powerful than us. And this is our punishment for trespassing. The gate is still open in the observatory. And every once in a while, this low cry rocks the building. I hope we run out of power before something else tries to get through. One of the things is at the door now. Me and Dr. Gray have accepted our fates. I just hope this place is secure enough so nothing will get out. The cries from the gate are getting louder now. If you are listening to this, I'm sorry.